So what is financial coaching? Has anybody ever heard of financial coaching before? Ever done it? All right. So financial coaching is relatively new. My goal is to kind of serve the portion of the society that is not necessarily ready for a financial planner yet or financial advisor. The investment management company I worked at needed to have 75 grand in assets to get financial planning. Not everybody is ready for that yet. So what do you need to do if you want to get an education, right? If you want somebody to kind of put the wind behind your back in terms of getting your financial house in order. So that's how I stumbled upon financial coaching, as I was just doing some research, trying to figure out what I wanted to do. Basically, as it says here, I'm a personal trainer, right? So the same way you would hire a personal trainer to get you in shape physically, right? I'm going to get you in shape financially. Personal finance is really more personal than it is finance. And what I mean by that is each individual, you look around this room, each individual has their own goals and objectives, right? An investment strategy for one person might not be the same for another person, right? Some people might have kids, they need to plan for education. You know, everybody's going to hopes to retire one day and have money, you know, to live off of when they retire. We start off kind of talking about your spending plan, right? So better known as budgeting, right? An ugly word, nobody really likes it, right? So I kind of wanted to give it more of a positive spin, right? So we're going to call it a spending plan. This is essentially will serve as our financial GPS, right? So when you're in your car and you're trying to get to somewhere, you don't always know exactly. You know, sometimes they'll tell you, "Oh, meet us here at this place," or you got to take your kid to a football game or whatever the case may be, right? So you use your GPS. You know, your GPS is going to help you get there. That's what your spending plan is going to do. Week to week, month to month, quarter to quarter, year to year, you have to have some type of spending plan, right? So this is going to help you accomplish the goals that we talked about earlier. Pay yourself first. Has anybody ever heard of that concept? Pay yourself first?
Yes.
So pay yourself first, basically what that means is you want to try to maximize your pre-tax dollars, right? So literally pay yourself first. That means even before Uncle Sam gets his cut, right? So what that means is taking advantage of your 401k plan, right? Putting some money away for that. Any other tax advantage, you know, an IRA, any other tax advantage type of investment vehicles that you can use. Always pay yourself first, right? Your creditors are always going to be there. They're not going anywhere. You know, other things that you got to pay. Take care of yourself first. Automation is a big thing I talk about. Pretty much all of my bills are automated. They come out automatically. Now, that doesn't fit everybody's ideal situation, right? But if you can, you want to automate as much as possible. This makes things kind of hands-off. You don't have to worry about missing a bill. You don't have to worry about going and writing a check every month or whatever the case may be. Or investing, right? Investing is a big thing where, you know, if that money comes out automatically, you'll never even see it in your paycheck, right? It's kind of out of sight, out of mind. Allow it to be taken out automatically. This way it's done and over with. You'll have what you have left over, and then you can go from there in terms of, you know, leisure spending from month to month. Every dollar is pretty much accounted for, right? Now, after you kind of go through an initial kind of hardcore budgeting, you can kind of, you know, you're not going to keep track of the 35-cent pack of gum that you bought at the corner store. You know what I mean? Like, but what you want to know is where's your money going? You don't want each month to go by and you don't know where your money went. How many times have you gone to look at your bank account and be like, man, I thought I had this much, and you know the money is not there. First concept we kind of talk about is good debt versus bad debt, right? So what is good debt? What is bad debt, right? Good debt is typically, right, buying a home, right, taking a mortgage out for a home, even maybe a vehicle, you know, you can consider good debt because you need to get back and forth to where you need to go, including work, where you need to make a living, right? Bad debt. You know, the number one thing I consider as bad debt is my number 2 point here, which is credit cards, right? Consumer debt. Debt that you really would want to try to avoid at all costs if you can, right? But we all have emergency situations. You know, we're all trying to pick up those side hustles and make a little bit of extra money. If we don't have that side hustle for whatever reason, perhaps we have to use credit cards to take care of some of the essentials in life. But credit cards are one of the things that are the biggest, it's one of the biggest things that hold you back from accumulating wealth, right? Because credit cards typically come with really high interest rates, right? So what does a credit card do? It gives us the ability to use money we haven't earned yet, right, now, and then we'll pay for it later, right? Average is 17.11%, right? 17.1%. So you're paying 17% to use money that you haven't earned yet, or that you would just rather try to put off into the future, right? 17% for just the average is high. Unless you have really, really good credit, you're making really good money, you're going to be somewhere around here. As you said, you know, most people are going to be up to 20-25% on your interest rates, which is a lot. It's a lot to pay for money. You're basically paying for your money, right? The ability to use it now, but you're going to try to pay it off going on to the future. Oh, student loans, would you consider that good debt or bad debt? What do you guys think?
Bad debt.
Bad debt? Anybody think it's good?
Well, right now.
Good?
Yeah, that's a good debt.
All right, and that's why I put it up here, because sometimes you don't know. Is it good debt or is it bad debt, right? So it could be good debt, right? It should be good debt, right? You're paying to get an education, to further yourself, to better yourself, right? Hopefully get further employment, right? Hopefully this will get you a better job down the road at some point. But if you don't have a plan, it could turn into bad debt very quickly. Many people end up paying for an education, and they spent $70,000, $80,000 on an education, and they're making $40,000 a year. That's when it turns into bad debt, right? Because they didn't have a plan. They didn't realize that being an elementary school teacher was only going to allow them to pay the minimum on their debt for the rest of their life. You know what I mean? So if you don't have a plan, even education, even student loans, trying to better yourself, trying to do the right thing, right, can turn into bad debt. So you got to go in with a plan, right? How much am I willing to take out in order to get my education? How much can I work a side gig or something like that to pay as much as I can on my own, you know, for books or, you know, various fees, things like that. So typically good debt, but if you don't have a plan, it could easily be bad debt. And the last debt I'd like to talk about is auto loans, right? I have just a couple hard, fast rules. I advise people never buy a brand new car. Do not buy the 2019 version of whatever car that you want. Because as soon as you drive that car off the lot, guess what? It's worth about maybe 15% less than you just paid for it. And then you add on the interest on top of that, it's about 25% less than what you paid for it by the time you end up paying it off. You understand what I'm saying? So what you want to do is, you know, ideally, at least, if you're going to buy a brand new car, at least try to put 20% down, right? It seems like a lot, right? So if you put 20% down, say a $20,000 car, you're talking about at least $4,000, right? You also want to make sure that you don't finance what they call the tax and tags, right? So you got to pay the tags, the registration, and all of that. They'll ask you if you want to finance those things, just tack it on to the cost of the car. You typically want to try to pay those. So now you're talking about at least $5,500 you want to have if you want to buy a $20,000 car, right? That's 20% down. But cars are depreciating assets. What does that mean? They go down in value. They never go up. You know, unless you got some vintage car that you can, you know, refurbish or something like that, and maybe resell it at a later time. Auto loans you need to be really careful with. If you don't have great credit, you know, you're better off maybe buying something cash if you can, and then get your credit together, and then later on down the line, finance a car if you want to get something newer. So that's one of the things that I cover as a coach, a little bit more in depth if you get into the coaching program. All right, saving and investing. I'm very big on education. Education means a lot to me. I have 4 boys of my own at home. My oldest is just 8 years old. But I stress education to him every single day, right? Eventually, I do want him to go to college or maybe even pick up a trade, whatever works for him, right? But you have to save and invest for college. I mean, it's one of those things where it's going up faster than the rate of inflation. So what does that mean? Inflation is the cost of goods over time, right? So inflation is going up at about maybe give or take 4%, right? Education, particularly college, is going up at about 6%, right? So it's going faster than just your typical everyday goods that you might buy at the grocery store or wherever the case may be. So you want to have a plan. You want to have a plan with this. Do you want your kid to go to a private or a public school? If you want them to go to a private school, it costs tuition, right? You have to pay for a private school. If they go to a public school, obviously not, but you still want to make sure they have the things that they need in terms of school supplies, school clothes, things like that. College versus vocational, right? So this is a very big thing for me right here. A college education, as we just talked about, is very expensive. It's very expensive. If you can't pay for this on your own, or you don't have some type of savings vehicle, investment vehicle to help you pay for college, that's when you're going to start taking out those student loans. The more student loans you take out, the more likely it is to become bad debt, right? Vocational school, on the other hand, a lot of people, it's stigmatized a little bit, right? Vocational school, becoming a welder, HVAC, those types of things. People, they look at it as kind of like manual labor, that kind of thing. But believe it or not, you can get the vocational education. Average vocational degree is only going to cost you $33,000. Think about that.
That's a year?
No, $33,000 for the entire degree.
Total, yeah.
You might pay $33,000 a year to go to college.
Yeah.
Right? Guess what? You're pretty much going to make the same coming out of vocational school as you are going straight out of college. Now, you might have a little bit more upside in the long run with a college degree, right? So you might be able to make $80,000 or $100,000 somewhere down the line. Once you've been in the workforce for maybe 15, 20 years or something like that. Straight out of school, vocational, you can make 50, 60, right? And you only got $33,000 that you had to pay for. Hopefully, none of that is financed if you're lucky, or even if part of it is financed, you'll be in a much better situation than going to college. It all depends on what you want to do, right? Again, personal finance. It's up to you, right? Does anybody know what the average cost of a 4-credit class is? Just to kind of quantify it a little bit. It's like one college class. Huh? A little bit more than that. And you might be able to do that at a community college. If you go to a 4-year institution, $2,973. And that's just to pay for the credits themselves, right? So
That don't include books.
Administrative fees, right? Campus maintenance fees, all these fees and all of this stuff that they tack on there. Right. This also doesn't include room and board. This is literally just for the class. You know what I mean? And that's the average. You want to go to one of these, more name brand schools or whatever the case may be, you could easily pay maybe double that for one class, right? So you typically take 3 or 4 classes in a semester. I mean, it adds up very quickly. So you might your plan, going back to our plan, maybe I think I can do something vocational, And with vocational skills, right? They never go out of style, right? You could be an HVAC forever. You could be a welder forever. Some of these jobs that you get coming out of college, I mean, they'll get rid of you as soon as the machine can do your job better than you. Right? That goes for vocational as well. But typically, when you're working with your hands, you can make that last forever. You can also typically go into business for yourself quicker with vocational skills, right? I mean, how many? There's you Google HVAC companies, a whole list of them will pop up, right? Those guys started out at the ground level, saved their money up, they were smart about it, they had a plan, and they started their own business, right? With minimal debt to start out with. And just real quick, I'm going to touch on 529 plan. This is something I go into in depth. 529, anybody ever heard of 529 plan?
Does anybody have one?
Anybody have a 529 plan?
Everybody in here should.
Everybody needs
Who in
one.
here has children? Oh, we don't have no children.
If you have children, especially, you need a 529 plan. The great thing about 529 plan, and that's my second point, is actually they're really flexible. You can actually get a 529 for yourself. 529 plan for yourself. A 529 plan is for education, obviously. It actually can be used for like elementary school. If you want to send your kid to a private school, you can use a 529 plan. It doesn't have to be for college. It doesn't have to be for vocational. You can send them to elementary school or high school, or private high school, based off of a 529 plan. So what you do is, basically the way the 529 plan is set up is, it's meant to give you tax advantages, or more importantly, growth advantages for your money. So what happens is your money goes into the 529 plan. They're typically run by the state, right? So each state has their own 529 plan, and then some states actually have like, they have private 529 plans that are run by like Fidelity or Vanguard, various companies, that kind of thing. But basically what happens is your money grows tax-free, right? So it's after-tax investment from your standpoint, but the money grows tax-free, right? So when you go to withdraw that money, there's no penalty, there's no nothing, right? You get all of the growth that comes from this investment vehicle, right? And so if you got a kid, you open up a 529 plan. It's not hard at all. That's something that we go over in my coaching program, how to open it up, how to get it started. Sometimes just getting it started is the catalyst, right? Getting the account open. Even if you just put $100 in there to get it started, right? Open it up, put some money in there, and now it's there. Again, I'll go back to automation. I can only put $10 in there, for whatever reason. Right now, I can only put $10 in there a month, right? Automate it, get the $10 going in there. Once your financial situation improves, all right, we'll up it to $25 a month, whatever it is. But get it started. Once you get it started, that whole process is over with. Now you just fund the account as you can.
Okay,
right?
Can I add something?
Go ahead.
All right. So I had one, right? I bought one for my son when he was 8, right? So I bought one, and one of the reasons why I bought it was because you didn't have to, you only paid taxes on it once. Right? So even if I didn't use it towards if I used it towards his education purposes, then I didn't pay any tax. But if I didn't use it for anything regarding education, I paid taxes one time. So let's say if you wanted to buy a boat, this is what rich people do. They'll make the fund, this is my boat fund. You'll put it in your kid's name, you'll save up all the money you need for the boat, and then even if you take it out, you're only paying the taxes on it one time. Even if you never even gave it to your children. You understand what I'm saying? It's a way to hide money, and you can also fund their education. So if you needed to, say your kid goes to college, you need to buy books, you can pull the money out, use it for the books. As long as you can prove to them that you use it towards education. So for instance, with mine, I put maybe $6,000 in it. And then when I got married, this was in 2007, I needed the money. I pulled the money out, I paid tax on it one time. Versus me paying taxes every year on it. Right. You know what I'm saying? I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
That's something new to us with a 4-year-old.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that goes into the 529 plan. I don't want to hog up all the time by getting into every little detail, but something you want to look into, when you get home, particularly if you have kids. And again, just to touch on the flexibility, again, you can get a 529 plan for yourself if you want to. You plan on getting some further education at some point down the line, right? Maybe you just graduated college, or you just got out of vocational school, right? Maybe later on down the line you're thinking about going and getting your master's. Or if you've already got your master's, you're thinking about getting your doctorate, right? But you're not ready to do it right now. Open up a 529 plan for yourself, right? You can move it from one beneficiary to the next, right? If you got a 5-year-old and when he gets college age, he doesn't want to go to school, and he had a 1-year-old brother at the time, well, maybe the 1-year-old, he's a few years away from college, maybe he want to go to college, right? I can move it from my, now 18-year-old to my, 14-year-old, right? With just a filing of a little bit of paperwork. Very flexible.
So you can open it whenever?
You can open it whenever. And whenever. Yeah, I mean, if your kid is a long way now, obviously you want to do any type of investing, the earlier the better, right? Because now you have a longer time horizon for your money to grow. retirement is something that we all hope to do, right? We all hope to be able to not work one day, just be able to live out the rest of our years and kind of relax, maybe take some vacations, so on and so forth. Retirement, again, once you start hitting your workforce, you want to start saving. Because as C said, you want to take advantage of compound interest. What is compound interest, right? Albert Einstein, right? Known as one of the smartest men to ever do it, right? He described it as one of the most powerful forces in the universe. that was his description of it. And what he meant by that was the ability to earn money on earned money, right? Or really unearned money. Excuse me. So what happens is let's say I invest $1,000, I made 10% in the first year, right? So I made $100 in the first year. Well, now I'm going to make interest on that $100 as well. I didn't have to work for that extra $100. It worked for me. And now, guess what? If I make 10% the following year, now I make $110, right? So I'm making $110 on just the same $1,000 investment, right? So I made $100 the first year at 10%. I made $110 the second year because I get another 10% on that extra $100, right? So that was $100 I didn't have to work for, right? I just invested my money, picked a safe vehicle to put my money into. I got a 10% return, and now that money is making money as well, right? So that's what compound interest is. It's earning money essentially on unearned money, meaning you didn't have to work for that. You didn't have to trade your time to make that extra money. Your money is working for you, and now you're making extra money on top of that. So you want to start as early as possible, right? Most important thing is just to set the proper expectations and goals, right? What do I want my retirement income to look like? What do I want my retirement in general to look like? You know, hopefully my home is paid off. If I purchase a home, my home is paid off by then, those types of things. So I want to make sure I'm setting the right expectations. You know, sometimes some people set unrealistic expectations. They think they're just going to go into retirement. They're going to go on a vacation trip every other month. You know, it's just not necessarily realistic. You know what I mean? So you want to set the right expectations and goals. Maximizing your 401k is a really important thing, right? So most people work a job where they go to, they clock in, they clock out, right? Their employee provides a retirement plan set up that they can participate in, right? You'd be surprised how many people do not take advantage of the employer match that they get. Employer match is the same thing as saying free money, right? Just think, anytime you hear employer match, think free money, right? Your employer typically is going to say, if you put at least 5% in, I'll match that 5%, right? So what does 5% mean? What, if you're making $50,000 a year, 5% I think is $2,500, they'll match it with another $2,500. Free money. Mm-hmm. You'd be surprised at how many people just don't take advantage of getting the free money. They want their money in pocket now. Maybe they need it. Some people do need it right now, right? But if you really don't need that money right now, and you can afford to put that $2,500 away each year, please take advantage of that match. That's free money. That's an extra $25. Think of it as a bonus check every year. You get $2,500, and it's being invested on your behalf. You don't have to do anything else. It's going right into your 401k account. Maximize your 401k. Ideally, you want to save between 10 and 15%. The government is going crazy these days. You don't even know that Social Security is going to be around. So you got to do for self. You know what I mean? So if you can get from 15 to 20% somewhere in there and manage it, I think that would be more ideal. And then just understanding Social Security altogether, right? What type of Social Security benefit can you expect when you retire? The full retirement age right now, I think is 67, or I think it might actually be like 66 and 4 months or something like that. They add a couple months onto it every few years, right? So you got to understand, what can I expect? You don't want to lean. You don't want to think you're going to lean on this money, the Social Security money, and it not be as much as you thought it was going to be, or you haven't put in the amount of time. The formula that they use is a little complex to calculate Social Security. But essentially, you got to have like 35 years of employment in. You know what I mean? And so if you haven't put the time in across your lifetime, you might be on the outside looking in when it comes to Social Security. Right now, does anybody know what the maximum benefit for somebody who retires today, full retirement, 67? Any idea? it's actually only about $2,700 a month. You know, around here rent is what, $1,500 a month, $1,200. You know, that money will disappear in a heartbeat if you haven't taken care of yourself. Risk management. I'll just go through this real quick because I know we got an insurance guy in the house. But you know, we talk about auto insurance, full versus liability, right? I kind of encourage having full no matter what, if the car's paid off or not. It might seem like you're saving money by just getting a liability, but really you're kind of leaving yourself exposed. If something happens to your car, there's no recourse for you to try to get the next car. You know what I mean? Like, unless you have money saved up to put a down payment on your next car or buy another car, there's no recourse if you only have liability. You know what I mean? They're just going to take care of the damages. You know, if your car gets totaled, you know, and maybe you got into a car accident with somebody else, they'll take care of the other car's damages, and that's it. You know, you got to have some. So I think having full, you know, I typically keep a policy where they'll give me the value of my car, right? So even if my car is paid off, if I get into an accident, they'll, you know, say my car's worth $8,000, they'll cut me a check for what the car was worth. You know what I mean? So it'll cost me a little bit more in premiums on a month-to-month basis, but I can take that $8,000, maybe go buy another car, you know, or put a down payment on another car. Unfortunately, I've actually had that happen, man. And this is another reason why I got into financial coaching. I've been through pretty much every scenario. Mm-hmm. The only thing I haven't been through is bankruptcy. You know, Lord willing, I will never go through that. So I understand pretty much everything I'm talking about, not from just an informational standpoint, but from just having experiences. Deductibles, real quick, I'll touch on that. This is kind of hard for some people because I recommend putting your deductibles up a little bit, right? So some people will put them down around like $500, right? Because they're thinking, okay, if something happens, all I gotta do is pay $500 and they'll fix my car or whatever, right? You know, the likelihood of you getting into an accident is really a lot lower than you think it is. You know what I mean? But we think of an accident, we see this stuff in our head of a bad accident, our car getting screwed up and everything, and so we want to have a low deductible. But really, higher deductibles means lower premiums, right? So if your premium is lower from month to month, guess what? That's more money for saving and investing. That's more money for leisure spending if all of your saving and investing is taken care of, right? And hopefully some of that money will go towards an emergency fund, right? Which is, I'll talk about here at the bottom, right? So we all should have an emergency fund. So you'll take a little piece of that, put in some in the emergency fund, maybe put some in the leisure fund, and put a little bit more into the saving and investing pot. Life insurance, right? There's all types of variables go into life insurance, so I'm not really going to touch too much on it. The one thing I do want to stress is the one variable we will all deal with is we will all meet our Creator one day, right? We all know that, right? Get yourself a final expense policy, right? Do not have your family scrambling around setting up a GoFundMe when and if something happens. It just adds, to an already stressful time. You don't want to leave that kind of burden on your family, right? So aside from, getting a term policy or something like that, or maybe if you own a home, making sure you have enough insurance to cover the balance of your home, something like that. Everybody should have a final expense policy. These are actually the policies that I used to sell. And I'm thinking about actually getting back into insurance a little bit, just to have those available for maybe even some of my coaching clients if they need it. So just real quick about the final expense policy. What that means is, obviously, something happens, you got to pay for funeral expenses, right? Get a $10,000 to $15,000 policy that should cover you. That should cover things pretty much. It pays out. It's the only insurance policy that pays out in 48 hours. 48 hours. Pretty much most of the other insurance policies don't pay out for. You got to go through a process, and it might take weeks or months to get paid out. So it's one of the only, if not the only. I'm almost 100% sure that's the only policy that pays out within 48 hours, because if something happens, the services typically take place in relative quick order, and they understand that. And just the emergency fund, another type of risk management. This is more just kind of fundamental, right? You want to try to have at least at least a couple months worth of expenses saved up. This way, God forbid you lose your job or whatever the case may be, you get sick, you're waiting on those disability payments to come in or whatever the case may be. You have an emergency fund that you can tap into. This way you don't have to go into your saving and investment vehicles and take the money out. You can kind of leave that money alone. Group coaching. So what I do is I do 45-minute educational webinars each week. Right? So for the first 6 weeks, we'll touch on one of those subjects. We'll do a deep dive. We'll touch on your personal situation. You'll be able to call into a conference call with 10 other people. There's only 10 people in each group to try to ensure quality of service. The reason why I love group coaching is because you learn from other people's experiences. Right? It's not just your experience, which is very important. But when you hear other people's stories, it might not even necessarily relate to you. It might relate to somebody you know, a sister, a brother, a mother, an uncle, right? You might be able to go back and say, this is what I heard in this group coaching. It kind of relates to the situation you're going through. We can tap into these different resources and avenues to try to figure things out. So I love the educational webinars. It's a lot of information in the 6-week period, but it'll give you everything you need to build a foundation. 30-minute Q&A after each 45-minute educational session, right? So open it up to everybody in the group. We'll do some Q&A, answer some questions. Maybe give somebody will want to get testimony or something like that. It helps people get things off of their chest. I mean, think about it in the black community in particular. We don't discuss finances enough, even in our own families, right? I grew up and my mom was very coy about her own personal finances. Now that I'm a little older, and I'm in the finance game, she's willing to open up to me a little bit about what's going on. We need to have those conversations from parents to children, from cousin to cousin, from uncle to nephew, those types of things. We need to be having more of these conversations. With that 30-minute Q&A session, hopefully it gives you the ability, the confidence to kind of talk about your personal situation a little bit, right? Then you'll be able to go back and let's say Thanksgiving's coming up, right? I'm going to go to the Thanksgiving table. I want to start a conversation about personal finance with my family members. I want us to start taking this seriously, collectively and individually, right? Now I have a knowledge base that I can bring something back to the table, and other people can benefit from that. Now we're all kind of gaining confidence from the people that we love with their support. Weekly budget review, right? So I'm going to have you do 6 weeks of hardcore budgeting. This budgeting, I will have you track that 35-cent package up. That's how hardcore it is. You know what I mean? But what that does is it gets you used to keeping track of your money. We've all been in situations where sometimes we don't even want to look at our own bank statement, right? We don't want to look at their credit card balance. You're going to do all that. And then some. And you'll get used to it. And then it'll be nothing to you. You go open that balance and maybe it's not exactly what you want to see, but you'll have a plan in place and you'll know I'll take care of that. I'll knock that out, no problem, right? Homework assignments. So each educational webinar, we'll talk about a certain subject. I'm going to have you look up an article and hopefully find something that kind of relates to you with regard to the topic for that week, right? Maybe just do one page write up on it, somehow how it relates to you or something like that. Required reading. I have a couple books in mind that I really love. A couple personal finance, more behavioral stuff. Behavioral finance is a burgeoning topic right now where they're talking about people's relationship with money, and not just how much money you make. You can make $1 million. You can make $1 million a year. If you're making $1.5 million, if you're spending $1.5 million, you're gonna be in trouble. So it ain't about how much money you make; it's about your personal relationship with the money. And so I have a couple books that kind of touch on that. We'll have required reading. Maybe hopefully mix in 5 minutes into our 30-minute Q&A each week, talking about what's going on in the book. And real quick, you actually get two one-hour one-on-one coaching sessions. This is on top of a free consultation. If you decide to try financial coaching, you get a free consultation to begin with. Then you'll get 2 1-hour one-on-one coaching. I haven't really found any other group coaching programs that offer the additional one-on-one coaching. And lastly, you'll have unlimited email and text support directly with me. So if you have anything that pops up during the week, or you have a question that you forgot to ask during the 30-minute Q&A or whatever the case, you can text it to me, email it to me, and I'll also be emailing you resources as it relates to your personal situation. If you want to open a 529 plan, I might go in on, during my time when I'm not engaged in one of the webinars or Q&A sessions, and I say, you know what, let me see if I can find the right plan, help her find the right plan, help them find the right plan, right? I'll shoot that to you through an email. And that's basically how the group coaching works. Again, this is very important to me. Just a quick personal story. When I was 11 years old, unfortunately, my sister passed away. She was 19 years my senior. She had 4 kids. 3 of them had to come live with my mother, me and my mother. My mother was 50 years old. She inherited a 9-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 3-year-old at 50 years old. Unfortunately, my sister being relatively young, it probably wasn't on her radar, to have her, financial, in terms of risk management, it just wasn't on her radar yet. These things need to be on our radar. If she had, just a relatively adequate term policy, right? Having 4 kids, it's important to make sure that they're going to be taken care of. If she just had a somewhat moderately adequate, it would have made things a lot easier on my mom from a financial standpoint, Instead, we went through the hardships that you grow up, in a home with one parent, and multiple kids, and, it's not necessarily easy. And so this stuff hits home for me. You know what I mean? This could have made things easier for, not just necessarily me, for my nieces and nephews. You know what I mean? They could have had a little bit more of the things that they wanted to. We wouldn't have had to skip out on, well, this person gets to play basketball this year, this person just gets to play football this year. You know what I mean? Those types of things. So this means something to me. I'm very passionate about it. And I think anyone who decides to invest in themselves and take advantage of this program they'll receive a return on investment higher than any stock, any formal education that they can get. The return on investment for this, we talked about 10%. This is infinite. You'll pass this to your kids. They'll pass it to their kids. You'll pass it around the Thanksgiving table. You know what I mean? This is infinite. The return on investment.